Let's address your 5 most common questions and comments about the debt ceiling and the possibility of the U.S. defaulting on our debt. Who are we in debt to? It's Biden's fault. It's Trump's fault. Well, maybe if we didn't send so much money to Ukraine. We go through this every year. What's the big deal now? Good. Default. We need to stop all this spending. Let's get into it. Who are we in debt to? About 70% of the U.S. public debt is owned by the U.S. government, investors like state and private pension funds, and the Federal Reserve. Basically, we own it. Just under 30% is owned by foreign entities and governments like China, Japan, Brazil, the UK, and many more. Blaming one specific president. This problem started long before President Biden or President Trump even came around. How far back? Let me put it to you this way. In modern history, the U.S. government has almost always spent more than it brings in taxes and revenue. That's why Congress established the debt ceiling in 1917. They said, hey, let's give ourselves a spending cap, and if we want to keep spending over that, we have to all agree and pass a law to raise the cap. Maybe if we stop sending money to Ukraine, we could deal with this. It's true. Ukraine got a lot of money from the United States in 2022. Our Congress allocated about $68 billion to the country. But not all that money actually went to Ukraine. Almost half of it went to our own Defense Department to help Ukraine with training, equipment, and weapons. So let's just do the math. And for good measure, I'll even count the money that went to our own Defense Department as money for Ukraine. It's still only totals a little more than 1% of the $6.27 trillion the United States spent in 2022. So if we're not spending it on Ukraine, where's all our money going? On things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, national defense, education, agriculture, treasury, transportation, those kinds of things. Americans are expensive. We go through this every year. What's the big deal now? Well, we actually don't go through it every year. You're confusing the debt ceiling issue with a regular government shutdown. These are two very different and separate things. The threat of a government shutdown, at least these days, happens at least once a year because Congress has to agree on some sort of annual spending plan. But the debate about raising or suspending the debt ceiling does not happen every year. The last time it happened was back in 2021, and Congress has a couple of options here. They can agree to either raise or suspend the debt ceiling. Rather than raising the debt ceiling by a specific amount, sometimes lawmakers suspend the debt ceiling for a period of time to allow the Treasury Department to borrow what it needs to pay our bills. We need to stop all this spending. Depending on your politics, that may be true. But stopping the spending won't solve the problem we're facing right now. Raising the debt ceiling today pays for yesterday's bills, and that bill is due technically tomorrow. But the Treasury Secretary says she can float the U.S. government and keep us from defaulting until about June. So Congress has some time to figure this out. It's important for you to understand, by raising the debt ceiling, that does not authorize any new spending. Raising the debt ceiling just allows the U.S. government to borrow what it needs to pay the bills we owe.